welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. I'd like to welcome Dr. Robyn Tiger and Dr. David Fessell. Thanks for joining us today, Robyn and David.
Happy to be here.
Great to be here, Cam. Good to see you, Robyn.
You too.
Okay, I'm very happy to be here as well. And by way of introduction, Dr. Robyn Tiger is a whole person well-being educator. Her website is titled Stress Free MD. She's a lifestyle medicine physician, trauma-informed mind-body expert, self-care doctor, international speaker, author, and podcaster, offering workshops, programs, retreats, and coaching. And I was thrilled that we got to meet in person at Dr. Jonathan Fisher's book launch party. And that was really awesome. And my college roommate, Kathy, said to say hi to you and your husband.
Hey, Kathy. And it was so awesome meeting you both at Jonathan's book launch as well.
Yeah, that was really fun. And I feel like we have a closer connection now than we did before. So that was terrific. And Dr. David Fessell speaks to emotional intelligence, creativity, and wellness through a doctor's eyes. He's an international speaker and coach, an HBR JAMA Psych Today contributor, and a faculty associate at the Ross Business School. And David has the distinction of being my very first guest to be on Stand Up for Doctors 3 times. It's your third time. Congratulations, David.
So happy to be back.
You're a special guest. So something that Robyn and David have in common is that they're both radiologists by training. And as many people know, I'm doing this work because of my own radiologist. And radiologists have a very special place in my heart. And I feel like you're unsung heroes. So just thank you for everything that you did for patients for all those years when many times you didn't get a thank you. So just thank you very much.
Thank you.
And today we'll be talking about something else that you both have in common, which is you both recently published books. So biggest congratulations to both of you. So I have the books, and that's what we'll be talking about today. So I always start by asking what you'd most like our audience to know about you. You can include hobbies, whatever you want. Robyn, would you like to go first?
Wow, yeah. So the thing I want you to most know about me is that I'm human. I'm a human being on this journey just like you. And so even though I'm a physician, I am a person before anything else. And I get it. I understand what it's like to be human, understand what you're going through, and I'm here for you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And David?
Yes, great question. I certainly resonate with what Robyn said. We're all human, and when we connect that way with authenticity, with vulnerability, I think it's a wonderful thing. One of the best parts of being human is connecting to each other's humanity. And yeah, I want people to know that I am a happy person. And that's what my book is about, 16 Ways to Create Happiness. And love to share tips for ways that we can be happier. And it's a really exciting adventure journey of life to discover happiness and to share it. So very happy to be here with both of you.
Thank you, David. That's beautiful. So I thought we'd start talking a little about your book. I received it first, so my first notes were on your book, and even the very first page, that poem, "Hope on the Horizon." So I didn't know if you have your book handy. Would you like to
I
read
do.
that poem?
I do. If you'd like me to read it, I'll be happy to.
Yes, please.
Yes, we can read it here. Hope on the horizon. Some days may feel dark with hope unseeing. And although we may not feel the sun's glow, there is light above the clouds. We too can spread warmth with kindness and care. May goodness sprout from our hearts as tears and hugs flow. May we be surrounded by support, knowing that hope rises with the sun, and together we too shall rise.
I just thought that was so beautiful, and it's even before the contents or acknowledgments. I was wondering if you wanted to share a little about that poem at all.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, I wasn't, there's a few poems in the book that I've written. I wasn't planning to include those, but the editor I was working with That was her idea, actually. So I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed them because I was like, I'm not sure we should put those in there. She said, yeah, I think it's a good idea. So we went with it, and happy to hear that it's touched you and hope it's touching other people as well.
Hmm. And so, Robyn, I think you have a copy of David's book, right? Did you get to you read that poem? Yeah, yourself.
I did. And yeah, it started off just so moving right from the beginning. Right from the beginning. I loved it.
Yeah, I agree. So, one thing, David, one of the pages I tabbed here was the being a friend to yourself in chapter 7, how to access your untapped inner resources. And you have a sentence here, you say, stop for a moment and think about what you'd say to a friend struggling the same way. You probably wouldn't say you're an idiot. And I think we can all relate to that, right? Because if we do something, we're like, oh my gosh, I am such an idiot, blah, blah, blah. So I was wondering if you'd like to speak a bit to that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that comes from my discovery of the whole field called self-compassion. Kristen Neff's work. She has a book by that title. And it's a wonderful thing that we can bring to ourselves. As doctors, we're great at being compassionate and empathetic to other people, and that's a wonderful thing. We shine our light of empathy and care and compassion on other people, but we can also take a moment now and then, and it's really essential to shine that warm light on ourselves, to be compassionate, to be kind to ourselves. All of us have a little kid inside of ourselves that has scared at times, is hurting, or is afraid, frightened or afraid, and we can be with that small child as we would with the child in front of us, with kindness, with care, with compassion, with friendship, and that's what that's all about. So developing those practices, that awareness, I think is a wonderful thing, and certainly needed for physicians. We have a strength of kindness and empathy, and we can also shine that warm light on ourselves now and then as well.
I love that. Would you like to speak to that, Robyn?
Yeah, I love that so much because, our default brain goes immediately to the negative, and we are hardest on ourselves. And we really need to drop that language and to let that light shine and to see ourselves as other people see us. And sometimes we need to ask ourselves, would someone say that to me? Would someone else say that same thing to me? Are other people really seeing me in that way? Or is that just my brain talking to me, saying things that aren't true? And so I really love that David brought light to that.
Yeah, I think it's so important. So thank you. And the next page I highlighted was page 47. It was chapter 10, 5 words for more happiness, an easy way to connect with yourself. And David, here you say, a part of me feels dot, dot, dot. And I love that. And I think I'm going to have to put that on my bulletin board because I think that could be like a game changer and really important. So I wanted you to speak a
Yeah.
moment or two to that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you're highlighting this one. That's a favorite of mine. That comes from something called internal family systems, IFS, and it uses an awareness of the different parts we have inside of ourselves. Maybe we have a critical part, like we were just talking about. Maybe we have a little kid part. Maybe we have a professional doctor part. These different parts of ourselves. And especially when we're upset, but also when we're happy and joyful, we can use it then too. But especially when we're upset or we're activated, triggered, maybe to say a part of me is angry, a part of me is lonely, a part of me is sad. And that opens up a whole nother aspect of ourselves. We have other parts of ourselves that can say, oh, hey, let's decide how we're going to handle this. We've been through tough times before. We have a more adult part, perhaps, that can come to that part that's hurting and say, hey, what could we do here? How can we make this better? How can we approach this with kindness, with care? So yeah, part of me, I remember when I wrote that particular chapter, I was visiting Hilton Head, and it was a vacation, solo vacation during COVID. And I love Hilton Head, and I love being there. I love riding bikes on the beach there. But I was there alone, and I was like, I'm feeling lonely. Oh my gosh, and I was like, what's going on here? I thought I was going to come and have this great vacation. And then I realized, oh, a part of me is feeling lonely. And even as I say that, I can feel my shoulders relax. A part of me is feeling lonely, not all of me. It's a part of me. Okay, now how can we roll with this? How can we ride with this? How can I reach out to other people, get some support, these sort of things. But when it's a part of me, it's not all of me. It's not running me. I'm not fused with it. I have more capability and more capacity to come up with things in the moment that are going to make it better. So it's really, really a helpful practice. I'm so glad you highlighted. That's one of my favorite things in the book. A part of me is feeling whatever it is. And also works for happy things too. A part of me is feeling joyful. Oh my gosh, look at this. You know, I can share that with other parts of me, with other people. You know, so it works. It works under a lot of different circumstances, but especially it can be helpful when we're feeling sad, when we're feeling lonely, angry, frightened, these things that can trigger us and cause a lot of difficulty in our lives.
Mm. That's beautiful. Thanks, Robyn.
Yeah, I love that, David. You know, it's really separating yourself from how you're feeling and recognizing that language that you're using is I feel sad, I feel lonely, instead of I am sad, I am lonely, and really separating that. And you are this innate, whole, amazing being that happens to feel these different things. As you described, a part of you is feeling, and seeing yourself as separate from those feelings, that you are not those feelings, you are not those emotions, and you can drop those labels and let those shoulders come down, and you do feel so much better when you do so. Love that.
I totally agree. That's terrific. So in chapter 12, David, you speak to introverts in the holidays, 3 tips to up your joy. So we're in the midst of the
Mhm,
holidays right now. This
mhm,
episode will
mhm,
drop just after the holidays, but there's more coming
mhm,
up, or it could be really any large gatherings or any gatherings at all, right? So I was just wondering if you'd
mhm.
like to speak a moment to that.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. As a self-described introvert that also likes people, use the introverts and extroverts language specifically around how we renew our energy. You know, and introverts tend to renew their energy with solitude, and that's really does it for me as well. I like people. I love being around people. I enjoy people, but when I want to renew my energy, it's usually in a lot of times in solitude or in nature and ways that are low stimulation. So to know yourself in that way is can be really, really helpful. And if you go into a social gathering and you know that those tend to be difficult for you in some ways, to plan little mini escapes, you know, find a little bathroom break. There's a funny story in the article I wrote about an author who was, you know, at a party and had to do that, you know, escape to the bathroom. And he was kind of writing a story about him being in the bathroom, recovering as he's at this party. And got me thinking about writing the article. You know, so there's different ways to do it. You know, you can seek out a quieter room and interact with people there. You can ask the host if you can help with something, or if you can go pick up some more, you know, soda pop or whatever it is to help the party, or you know, get something from your car. There's different ways to to soothe yourself, to calm yourself, to meet your own needs, whatever they may be within the party. You don't have to leave permanently, but you can do things to renew yourself. So that's a big point of the article. Know yourself, know what you need, and plan ahead ways that you could do that so you can enjoy yourself. Other people can enjoy you as well.
That's great. Did anything in there resonate with you, Robyn?
Yeah, I love that you talk about that, David. You talk about that in another section in creativity, which really I got pinged by when you said, give yourself the invitation to be alone and recognizing that sometimes that's what you need. Um, Noticing when you have your best thoughts. And so that really resonated with me. My family is learning more and more about my need to be alone, and it doesn't mean I don't want to be with them. It means I need to have that space to myself sometimes. And they're getting it. It's taking time, but they're getting it and they're understanding. So
Mm,
I love that concept, even as you weave it into that point of being creative and needing that space and giving yourself that permission to be alone. So good.
yeah, nice. I'm glad your family is learning you and appreciating you, and when you can get that alone time, I'm sure they love your energy and your aliveness when you're with them. So great.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we'll do a little back and forth. So I think we'll do a few now from Robyn's book. And Robyn, one page I tagged here was page 29, Lessons from the Heart. Question, what organ does the heart feed first? And the answer is itself. That was another thing like David's poem. There's like, oh my gosh, it just like got me. And you say on that page that chronic stress is America's #1 health problem, and 70 to 90% of all visits to primary care physicians are for stress related problems. That seemed high. I was like, oh, wow. And the only other thing I'll share from that page is you said the AMA Code of Medical Ethics on the topic of physician health and wellness states physicians have a responsibility to maintain their health and wellness for the safety and effectiveness of the medical care they provide. However, physicians are not taught how to maintain their own health and wellness, and this is my why. So I'll say me too, and I quote Kathy Stepien all the time, who says everyone wins when physicians are well. And my own mission now is to build connection and create advocacy for healthy doctors. So I'd like you to speak to that.
Yeah, well, I so appreciate all that you're doing for all of us, not even just physicians, but everyone listening. And yeah, I too was stumbled when I was at a meeting and someone asked that question, what does the heart beat first? No one in the room got the answer correct.
Mm,
Even those of us who are supposedly experts in anatomy as radiologists,
mhm,
um, that was not my answer. And it really, really brought it home that we need to take care of ourselves first, our heart first, the true self that we are inside, not just the organ, but the human. And yes, it is astounding that up to 90%, depending on what research we read, 90% of symptoms that we're experiencing, again, we are humans too, even as physicians, even as healthcare professionals, those symptoms are secondary to chronic stress.
mhm,
And so we really need to ask important questions when symptoms arise of ourselves and as well as of our patients and the people in our lives, because the root cause of most of what they're experiencing is from chronic stress, which
mhm,
is a good thing because then we can use tools to combat it.
mhm. Absolutely. What does that bring to mind for you, David?
Yes, I love Robyn's book. So enjoyed it. Read it in one sitting. It was so compelling and enjoyable. And you know, your story is so amazing. You've lived it, and that you're helping people now deal with chronic stress. I think it's just wonderful. And I love the tips. So many great tips in your book, Robyn. So thank you for that gift to the world.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's terrific. And the next thing I wanted to spotlight was on page 37 when you talk about the feelings wheel. So my physician coach, Dr. Michael Hirsch, did introduce me to the feelings wheel. And that was another game changer there. Because, he has shared that, before he found coaching, he thought he could feel for the, whatever, like happy, mad, sad, and frustrated, right? And he's like, oh my gosh, there's like all these feelings. And even for myself as a physical therapist, and I used to be on the ambulance corps as a teenager, I've been taught to compartmentalize way since then, right? And then you just shove these things in a little box and you don't think about, wow, like all these kind of feelings you could feel. So if you'd like to speak a bit to that.
Yeah, it can be really, really helpful to label what's going on. And sometimes it helps to have that wheel to look at, to really identify, yes, that is the feeling, that is the emotion, that's what I'm experiencing right now. And it can feel like you're much more in control when you can name it, when you can label it. And that really comes from my trauma informed training that, Michael also is trained in as well. And going back to that labeling, I feel angry. I feel frustrated. I feel stressed. It's important to recognize that you are this person who happens to be feeling this thing versus I am angry. I am stressed. I am blah, blah. And that's just so heavy and you just sink and the shoulders drop and you feel more upright and in control when you can actually name what's going on and then get to the root cause.
Mhm. David?
Yeah, love that. I love Dan Siegel's phrase with that name it to tame it. You know, and they've done, as you know, I'm sure, Robyn, the functional MR study showing that blood flow in our brain changes when we name a feeling with precision, going from our amygdala, our emotional center, to our prefrontal cortex, where we have more capacity for choice and decision and creativity and all the wonderful things that help make us human beings. So I love that. I love that you have the feeling wheel in your book. I love that we're talking about it. And when we could have more language around our feelings, more facility and awareness and ability to name our feelings, it can do just wonderful things for us and for the people around us as well.
And that can change and be flexible because you're not none of us are rigid and don't have to be stuck in thinking I am this. It just is I'm feeling like this right now, right? And so then that brings me to page 71 in your book, Robyn, where you say, here's the amazing thing. You can't think and feel at the same time. Really, you can't think a thought and feel a feeling simultaneously. So I'd like you to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, that was a bit mind-blowing for me, and I studied that concept more deeply in yoga therapy training and trauma therapy training. And pretty incredible that we have our five senses, I call them our five friends, that are sending information to our brain constantly, but we're actually only conscious of about 10% of those sensations, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and so on, your sight. And so because we can't actually think a thought, I know you're trying it right now.
Yeah.
Because we can actually really, really think a thought and feel a feeling in our body, when our brain is full of those 60,000 thoughts per day, most of them not so nice, many of them on repeat, we bring attention to the sensations in our body, we can increase that 10% conscious knowing of those senses to a much higher number. We come out of busy thinking mind, we come back into our body, which then actually creates space in our mind and we can start to work with those thoughts. And so that concept is really, really helpful. We want to get out of busy thinking mind so that we can actually then turn around and work with those thoughts that are creating those unwanted feelings and emotions.
David?
Yeah, yeah. This reminds me of one of my favorite parts of your book, Robyn, where you talk about the difference between top down and bottom up. Taking in the sensations from our body, five friends. I love that phrase. I hadn't heard that before, so I love that. And our body is always in the present moment. So when we can connect to our senses and what's coming to us through our senses, then we're more present and not caught up in our thoughts and racing and spinning and all those things that the top-down thinking does for us. So I love that. It's only in the last few years that I heard that wonderful distinction. Lo and behold, going through medical school and years of training and all this, never heard about top-down versus bottom-up in medicine, but at a yoga retreat center. So there you go. I love that. I love your focus on the body and sensations and the wisdom in our body. So yeah, I just love that part of your book, especially.
Hmm. And being present when you take a walk, sometimes to focus on one thing. Like I'll take a walk and I'll think, okay, what are all the things I can hear, right? So if you're just focusing on that, then it kind of removes that monkey mind for a few minutes, right? Or let me try to find pretty flowers in everybody's yard, right? Or something like that. So I really love that. Another page I dog-eared was page 141 under yeah, stress less, move better. Tool, release the Tin Man. If you would like to speak a moment or two to that and how you decided to put that in there and what that's about.
Yeah, so one of the symptoms of that, up to 90% of symptoms related to stress is tension in your body. Tension in your body. And I felt like the Tin Man years ago when I had so much chronic stress on board. Like the Tin Man is like, you can't move, right? You remember from the Wizard of Oz when he's like, oil, 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 and he just, he wants someone to spray oil in his joint so he can move. And so I think of it like Tin Man-itis, which is something that I experienced and so many individuals over the last several decades that I've worked with experience as well. And that's because when your stress response is on board, whether it's a real emergency or not, and most of the time it's not, your body's getting tense to really run away from that wild animal that's chasing you that isn't really there, but it's going to react the same way. Over time, your brain thinks your body is supposed to be in that stance, in that tense position, and you get stuck there. And that's why your shoulders stay forward, your head stays forward, you have pain in your neck and shoulders and your back, and you see all these people walking around like that. And you might have, pain in your hips, pain in your big toe, whatever. It lands in different places. And so in my studies in yoga therapy, I specifically studied somatic movement, and it was a very wonderful way of movement to release that chronic tension so that your brain can be re educated and your muscles can lengthen and be long and stay long. because stretching doesn't really work. It feels really good, but it's not long lasting. But moving in this way is. And so that's why I included that. And that is probably one of the most favorite sets of movements that I share and that the book has had reflections on.
Yeah, terrific, David.
Yeah, I think that's so helpful and so important, and elaborating the stories in your book about people that you've helped with that and yourself as well, saving your own life with your discoveries along these lines. So kudos to you, Robyn, and thanks for sharing all that you've learned with us, your book and your work and your speaking and all you do.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. So we'll do one more and then we'll get back to David's book. So on page 164, what I have learned is that people in the South seem to understand and prioritize the importance of social connection. So I was a little bit curious. So some of my relatives and some of my very best friends are south of the Mason-Dixon line. I've spent my life in New York and Connecticut. And though some people I know that have moved up from this way down there felt like they were like friendly to your face, but if you weren't from the South, like they wouldn't really accept you. But you moved from years in like New Jersey, right down to the South. So I was wondering if you'd like to speak a bit to what was like to move from the North to the South.
Yeah, initially a bit of a shock in some ways. I still had that Yankee brain, as they call it. Actually, one of my transcriptionists used to say she was from the South, and years she'd say, "Stop talking so Yankee, Dr. Tiger." I'm like, "What?" Because she said I talk so fast, and she couldn't really catch everything I was saying, and I didn't really quite understand it until I moved. And as soon as I got here, it was such a shift. I mean, I used to run like multiple errands in like 30 minutes. I'd leave the hospital and I'd hit the post office, the dry cleaner, the bank. I mean, I'd pick up dinner. I was home. And now I could probably run one because people are looking me in the eye and they're saying, "How are you? What's going on? How's your day going?" And they really mean it. Like they really want to know. And you alluded to this earlier in our conversation when you said that we met in person at Jonathan's book launch and how special that was. And so there is something really, really powerful about human connection and social connection. Well, David talked about this as well, that humans need humans. And recognizing that is medicine in itself. And it's really, really important for our well being. I think Harvard research actually says that that is probably the most important thing that we need is each other. And moving to the South has been an incredible shift. It's okay to only get one thing done in the same amount of time because I'm getting all of that goodness from the people that I'm with and people that don't even know you. So it's pretty incredible.
That's great, David.
Yeah, that reminds me of my one of my favorite stories from your book. Just give you a hint because I don't want to steal your thunder. I want you to tell us about your daughter and the eye contact. So yeah, I'd love to. Would you like to tell that little story about your daughter and what she said?
Oh, yeah. So my daughter was younger. She was looking at me and she said, "Mommy, I love when you look at me in the eyes when you talk to me, Mommy." She used to bookend her sentences with my name. And she really appreciated as a young child that presence, that connection, that that humanness. And it also made me realize how often I wasn't being present, that I had no idea what was going on, that I was listening but not hearing. And that was a very important wake up call for me many years ago. Thanks for reminding me of that, David.
Yeah, I love that. I love that story. I wrote that down when I was reading your book. It's so powerful, and the small things like that when we can share eye contact when we're talking to someone, when we can share a smile, uh, it can just really turn around someone's day. It's remarkable. I memories of people doing that for me and having a bad day and somebody smiled and it's like, oh wow, okay, there's some good in the world and look at this, it's positive interaction. So those small little things that mean so much to people and how we interact with them.
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And David, I'd like to get back to your book a little. And on page 64, you talk about a sense of awe. And I had read something, I think, even separately from your book about how critically important experiencing a sense of awe is. And I'd like you to speak a bit to that.
Yeah, I love this. I love this studies around awe. There's been a lot of research lately that shows how wonderful it is for us to take in experiences of awe and wonder, whether it's, looking up the starry night sky, dark sky, and the stars there, with looking into the eyes of our daughter or son or loved one or a pet. These experiences do wonderful things for our minds, our bodies, our hearts. The research on this is really clear and really remarkable. We can cultivate those experiences of awe, really doing ourselves a favor. We can help other people have them as well. We can drag people outside and say, look at the starry sky. How do you feel when you see that? Name it and share it with other people. It's remarkable. Dr. Culter at Berkeley's got a recent book about it, talking about his own life story and his research. He's one of the world's experts on the topic of awe. Um, yeah, I was really happy to have that chapter in the book about awe. I did a HBR article on awe and wonder as well, and how it's important to help our well-being. And it's a simple thing that we can cultivate when we see it, when we know it, experience it, we can share it, we can cultivate it, and bring more well-being to our life by adding a bit of awe and wonder in simple ways and small ways.
Absolutely, Robyn.
Yeah, I love that, bringing more awe and wonder into your life. And you reminded me now of another story from my other child, my son. When he was young, they have to get up so early to catch the bus. It's for school, and I could save them about 45 minutes in the morning driving them instead of going to the bus stop and waiting for the bus and being on that bus. And so I said to my son, do you want me just to drive you? You could sleep more. I know how exhausted you are. You've got sports and you're staying up doing work. And by the time you get up in the morning, you're so tired. And he said, no, Mom, I want to take the bus. And I said, why? And he said, because I love watching the sunrise over the bay while I'm driving on the bus to school every day. And I just was like, wow, wow, okay. And so now I get to the office, the same office that I work at the same time every week, and I get out of my car and I look up and I see the most beautiful sunrise. And that sunrise is there every single day. But as David pointed out, sometimes you need to point out, or you need other people to point things out that awe out to you. And so that just reminded me of that beautiful story that brought more awe and wonder into my life.
That is
Yeah, I love that.
beautiful. Yeah. And that he appreciated that as a young child too. And that's what I say we can often see through the eyes of children. So yeah, that's terrific.
Yeah, I love that story, and I'm feeling it now, that sense of awe as you described it and talk about it. And it reminds me of how our emotions are contagious. So when we cultivate experiences of awe, we share them naturally with other people and they feel it. And then it raises their well-being as well. So we do ourselves a favor, we do other people a favor when we cultivate awe in our lives.
So I would love to continue this conversation for hours, though we need to wind down. So, David, as we're winding down, the other chapter that I was going to speak to, it was tapping the power of music, and I did just drop an episode on Monday with Paige Saboyan and Candace Williams, and we speak about music and medicine. So, if you would either like to speak to that or just whatever you'd like to share about your book.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that out. It's one of my favorite stories in the book is from that chapter on music and how music can lift our moods. And not only the music, but learning the backstory to your favorite song.
Mhm.
There's a quick story in the book about during COVID, I was wanting some new music, feeling a little bit low, a little bit down, and thought a new song would help. And for some reason, Paul Simon's "Call Me Al" popped into my brain, and it has such a buoyant, bouncing melody to it. And I was enjoying it, and I was like, "Call me out. Where does that come from?" It stimulated my curiosity. So then I looked into the backstory. And it's a funny backstory. I don't want to give it away. It's in the book, or look it up online. But wonderful backstory to that song. And then I wrote an article about the backstories to other songs and how learning the backstory and sharing it with other people can be a great gift that you give to them, and a wonderful story and a wonderful connection. And I've shared that story about "Call Me Al" with so many people, and not only is the song a hit, but the backstory is a hit as well. So learn it, share it, backstories to your favorite songs.
That's terrific, David. Thank you. And Robyn, any closing remarks from you about your book or anything else?
Yeah, well, first I want to say one more thing about David's book. there was something I loved. I wrote it down. It was called The Humor Journal. The Humor Journal. And I had read your book prior to Thanksgiving break. And my family is incredibly funny, the kids, my husband, and we're not all together that often. And so when we are, it's just laughter galore. And then I always wish I could remember all the things that we're laughing about. And so when we got together for Thanksgiving, I said, we need to start writing all this stuff down. And my daughter started keeping all a humor journal, thanks to you, in the notes in her phone. And so we were laughing all week. And then we have all of this documented so we can go back and just like say those one-liners and we know what they are. So I just wanted to thank you, David, for that. I thought the humor journal was brilliant and it's really working well for our family. So thank you.
Love that.
And with respect to my book, thanks so much for bringing it to light here. I want to share with you that I wrote it in a way to help as many people as possible in the way they like to learn. And so that's why it's multimodal. If you are someone that likes, if you're an auditory learner, if you're a visual learner, if you're a tactile learner, there are many different ways to learn, not just in the words that you'll read, but there are over 20 videos, there are handouts, there's even a book club chapter with curated questions already for that connection piece. So I wanted to share with you that if you're someone like, I don't like to read books, you would find other ways to learn. And I intentionally tried to help out with that. How do you do the things that I'm talking about throughout the book? Also, that behavior change is something that's really, really difficult. You know, we're here in the new year when this is airing, and there are things that you want to change, but you don't know exactly how. So there's a whole section on behavior change. How do you effectively create those long-lasting behavior changes? What is the 5-step process to do that? So that's included as well. So just wanted to share the uniqueness in a way that is hopefully going to help you learn in the way that you like to learn best.
Well, thank you both. This has been fantastic. And how I always end is in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.
Stand up for doctors.
Thanks, Kim. Great to be with you too.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks.